Hello and welcome to the instructional video on the 2017 Chausson 610. So firstly go around the outside of the vehicle and then we'll proceed to the inside. So I'll start with the cab, go to the passenger side first. You've got your fill-off point for your fuel, just there. Okay, so the top one being diesel and the bottom one being the AdBlue, and there's a warning on the dash to tell you when you're running low on the AdBlue. Just be careful when you're pouring that in because it can be corrosive on the paintwork. If you spill any, just wipe that off as quickly as you can. So the diesel doesn't need a lock on it, because in order to gain access to that, the door has to be open. So that's where they are. You'll notice on the sill here you've got your tyre pressures. So the cab blinds are opened by pinching these together here and then running the front section across. Just make sure that's done evenly, so the bottom going at the same speed as the top. So that's the same on the front blinds, so they're pinched together here and they run across, and there's a magnetic strip to when you draw those together. So when you draw that one from that side, they draw together. That section there is to allow for the arm for the rear view camera, and then there's a magnetic strip there which joins them together. So to close those, you're just pushing back again, keep that even as you're pushing back, and then the click in by just pushing them back into position. The bonnet release on these Fords is done via the key. So you put the key into this lock here on the bonnet on the front. So you're turning it. So you're turning it once that way, and then once the other way, and that releases it. Okay, so that's just difficult to do with one hand while I'm filming. So that releases it, and then when you want to lift the bonnet, you've got to keep the key in that position, and then it'll allow you to lift the bonnet. So running along the features on the inside of the bonnet, you've got your coolant there. If you ever need to jump start the vehicle, you've got your positive point, which is this here. So the clips for the jump leads would go, so the positive is there, and then the negative is that nodule there. I don't know whether you can see that. So moving along, you've got your power steering fluid, oil, brake fluid, and your washer bottle is filled via that one there. Okay, so that concludes the cab. I'll just run around the bodywork, so the coach boatwork. The first thing we come to here is the vent for the boiler. Now, this has got a winter cover on it, and I'll show you how this releases. So if you pull at the bottom here, and then there's two clips on the top, locate onto those clips there. Now that must be off when you're operating the hot water. So that's the chimney for the gas system on the heating, the hot water heating. So if that isn't off, the boiler won't ignite, because you've got gas exhaust coming out of this chimney, and it will hit this cover, and then there's a sensor inside that will actually stop the boiler from working. So you've got carbon monoxide going back into the boiler, and it won't work unless this cover is off. So if you find that there's a fault with your boiler, the first port of call is to make sure that this is off. The next locker we come to is the service locker. So first one here, that's the main circuit breaker, so like a domestic circuit breaker that you'll find at home. So if there's a problem with any of the electrical appliances, or there's a short circuit, they will trip into the off position, and they are marked with off. So they all need to be in the up position to be operational, and then there's a test button at the top there. So when you're plugged into mains, if you can test it by pressing that button in, and they will all drop. Next one is your fuses, and in the instruction manual it's labelled, and in fact it's labelled on the actual unit itself to show you which appliances they refer to. So if you've got a faulty appliance, a 12-volt appliance, so that's your 12-volt fuses, that's the first place to look. And that's just your charger unit. And then that door closes to protect those. Next one along is your water tank. So this is your fresh water system, and it's filled via this hose here. So you put in a domestic hose into there, so like food or drug quality hosing into the end of there. So you unscrew that, fill that up until it pours out. You know it's full when it's pouring out of here, so it won't take any more. If we look down here, there's a tap. Now what this does is it drains this tank down to 20%, so it's a 120 litre tank, so you'll be left with 20 litres in the tank, which is what they call massive mud in order. So if you open up this tap here to that position, that will drain the tank then, and it will leave 20 litres remaining in the tank. So that's a partial drain for the tank. The full drain is just underneath, and I'll show you that. It's labelled up there just to show you. Just another noteworthy thing on the tank, if you wanted to ever clean it out, you can gain access to the tank via this here. You should only ever really need to do that once or twice a year just to keep the tank in good condition. Wouldn't recommend drinking from that tank. For drinking water, I would use bottled water. It's alright if you boil it, you know, for drinking cups of tea, etc. But I wouldn't recommend drinking from that. So we're now underneath the vehicle to fully drain that tank down. If you can see that pipe there, on the end of that there's a quick push fit cap on the end of it. So if you remove that, that will fully drain down the remainder of the tank. So that will get all of the remaining water out of the tank. In order to fully drain that tank down, you do need to switch on the pump inside and open up all your taps. So the shower, the sink in the bathroom, and the sink in the kitchen. Just while we're down here, this is the exhaust for the diesel heater. Just be careful, keep that clear because it will get hot. So you'll see exhaust coming from that. Nothing to worry about, it's just the exhaust from the diesel heater, which I'll show you when we go inside. The next thing along from the service locker is the mains hookup. So the mains cable will go into there. As you're probably aware from owning a caravan previously, but the lid of the cable sits onto that groove there, and to release it you're pressing that button down. So that's the mains supply into the vehicle. Next one along, we've got the access to the toll storage in the garage area. Now the shelves there that will drop down like that, so you can have store tall items in there. Some people take it skiing or whatever. Any tall item can be stored if you stow away those shelves. Now that one at the top there has got hanging space on it, so if you pull that down you can use it for hanging space for wet clothes. These catches are the same all around the vehicle. In order to close these, what you need to do is lock it first, then turn them round, and you'll feel the tension to know that it's in the closed position, and then push them in firmly, and that's it locked. They won't go into that position unless you first lock the barrel. So that's just the access to the outer locker on the back of the vehicle. Same applies, same locker system. So you're putting the key in there, locking the barrel, turning the tab around so that it's closed, and then pushing them in firmly. This is the third access point to the garage area. Just show you that these things here, that's one tensioning bar for the awning. I can't get the awning out here, but when you collect it I can actually show you the awning out if the weather's okay. This is the winder for the awning. Again, I'll probably show you the awning and how you wind that out on the day you collect, but I just haven't got sufficient room to wind this awning out today. So next to the garage is the toilet. This is where the toilet cassette is emptied. So I'll show you how to open that up. So that's done. So firstly unlock it obviously, and then push that in, and that gives you access to the toilet cassette. Toilet cassette is released by pushing this handle up here. So lift that up to the top, squeeze that and pull it towards you. That releases the toilet cassette. to empty this, you're pulling this nozzle around like that, unscrewing the cap off the end, and then pouring away the toilet waste through that nozzle. As you're doing so, press that button there. It lets air into this valve here as the liquid is coming out of the end to prevent it glugging and splashing. To fill this, you slide that back, open up that valve like that, pour the chemical into there and a little bit of water just to line the bottom, so the chemical will break down all the solids and get rid of the smells and turn everything into a blue liquid as it's poured out of the end there. To get this back in, that must be in that position, otherwise you're trying to push that in sideways, it'll break it, so that must be in that position. Slide that forward and then you're just sliding this back into a slot like that. Next thing along that we just need to know is the vents for the fridge. So the way the fridge works is it's drawing cool air in at the bottom and expelling hot air at the top. They need to be kept clear, particularly on a hot day. If you're not on a site and you have to be a certain way, don't let the sun point directly at that area, because it's just going to make the fridge work even harder. Just make sure that those vents are kept clear of debris and they're not too close to a wall or a hedge. Next one along is just a storage locker, locked the same way as the other things that I've shown you. The next one along is the gas locker. So that'll take a single gas bottle. You don't need two because the heating is dealt with via the engine fuel from the cab. Just need a pigtail on the end of that, so I'll sort that out. Okay, we're now inside the vehicle. Just start with this control panel. So that is the main on-off switch for the whole of the vehicle essentially. So that switch is on and off everything, so you won't get any of the lights working or the pump etc working without that being switched on. It's worth noting that that is the light switch, but it needs to be switched on to get the electric going from the bed operation and the electric table operation, which I'll show you in a second. That's your water pump. So that is the pump which is pumping from the tank, which we showed you outside. That is pumping the water from that out through the pipework and into your taps for the various places, so your kitchen and your bathroom. What you need to do when you first fill up the water tank is prime the system. So you need to fill the water tank up, switch the pump on. Might be able to just hear that running now. And then open up the taps both on the hot and the cold side. So it's a single lever tap. So to switch this on, you're moving to the left for hot and then switching it on by pushing it up like that, and then the cold side is to the right, and again pulling it up like that. You need to wait until you get a pure flow of water coming out of that tap and the one in the bathroom and the shower as well, and then you know that the system's primed, so it's taken all the air out of it, pumped all the air out of the pipework, and you're getting a pure flow of water coming out of the taps. You might need to let it run for 5 minutes or so before you get a pure flow of water coming out of there. So that's what they call priming the pipework, and it'll take a bit longer on the hot side because it has to fill the boiler. So back to the control panel. So we've covered the pump. That's your external light for outside. So that's the light that's just underneath your awning. These here are your level indicators. So the first one is your leisure battery. So you can see there it's taking it up to just over 2/3 full. That is your engine battery. So again, in good condition. This is your fresh water condition. So that's the fresh water level indicator. This here will actually switch the lights off on the control panel. So if you're in the bed which is directly across from this control panel, you can switch the lights off so it's not distracting and preventing you from sleeping. Next one along is the diesel heater control. So that's in the off position. To switch that on, you're just turning it round to the right, and the further right you go, the hotter the temperature will be. When you first switch this on, you will get some flickering from the LED lights. It's just the voltage fluctuation when it's first switched on. That will stop after the heater actually primes itself, because it's drawing quite a lot of current when it first switches on, because it's got to ignite the diesel. So that's drawing the fuel from the engine. So that's the there's no separate fill for that. It's just drawing its diesel from the actual cab diesel tank. So the front seats swivel. Just show you where the control is for those. Just at the front here, where you adjust the seat backwards and forwards. There's a lever here, so if you pull that forward, and then the seat will swivel from there. So that's the two seats swivel round. To make this area into a bed, the table needs to drop down, and that's done electrically via this control here on the front of the dinette. So you're placing this round headed key into this slot here, and then turning this either left or right elevates or lowers the table. So if you adjust the table position so it's in the correct position to go down and sit in between that dinette, so I'll do that now. So there's the table in its lowest position. You're just pulling this out, and then it's a leafed table which goes across like that to form the base for the bed. So if you remove the cushions from this side dinette here, what you then do is lift these flaps up, push those across, same on the other side, and that supports the hard backed piece that would normally sit there, and that forms the base for the bed. So that's the bed formed. There is a cushion in the garage, which is the one in the middle just there, and that fills the gap in between. At the front here, next to the table, is where the boiler is housed. So that's the boiler there. You shouldn't really actually need to do anything with that, but that's just where it's housed. That yellow tab, which is just there, that is the drain for the boiler. So that's actually in its closed position. To drain all the water out of the boiler, which is important to do in winter, you need to lift that up so that it is in the upright position like that. So that's the open position, and that will drain all the water out of the boiler, which it's extremely important to do. If you leave water in that boiler and it freezes over winter, it'll expand and crack the boiler. So I'm going to put it in the closed position now, but there's no water in it, so it's important to remember that if you're going to leave it, if you're not going to use it when you pick it up, you need to, that's probably one of the most important things, you need to lift that up and drain all the water out of the boiler. So the controls for the boiler are just here, and the top one being the temperature selection. So you've got 50 degrees at the top, 70 degrees at the bottom. This is for gas operation. Now I would suggest that you probably just leave it in the 70 degrees position and then mix it with the cold water so that you've got a lot of warm water, if that makes sense. The next one down is your temperature, your electric selection. So you've got low wattage at the top, middle is off, and then the next one down is high wattage. So if you're on a site that's got a low ampage, particularly abroad, then you want to be using the top position, middle position's off, and then the lower position is the high wattage. So controls for the oven. It's a grill and oven. Turning it right for the grill. It's operated on gas, so you need to flick that in, push that in for the igniter to work there, and then you're going this way round for the oven, and then again your igniter is pushed in on the cap. Fridge switched on via that button there. So this is a three-way fridge, meaning that it'll work on 3 different power sources. The first one being a gas, mains electric, and then 12-volt electric. So in order to select those, you're pressing that button there. So you've got gas, mains electric, and 12 volt. So the 12 volt, as you probably know from your caravan, will actually only work off the engine alternator. So you're pressing this to toggle through your power sources. If you've got the A selected there, it will automatically select the most relevant power source. So that will select, first of all it'll look for mains electric. If it can't find that, it'll then look for gas. If it can't find that, then it will then try and find the 12 volt system running from your alternator on the engine. So that's the button that you're pressing to select the relevant power source, or you just leave it in A, which is automatic. So if you switch off the gas, it'll then go to electric. If it can't find either of those, then it will look for the engine power. So that's probably the best position to have it in for everyday use. That's your temperature selection. So it's relevant to the ambient temperature. So if it's really cold, obviously you have it on the first position. If it's hot outside, you want the fridge to work harder. That is, it will defrost the fridge, defrost the freezer section. So you're just selecting that to defrost the freezer section. It's your freezer and fridge below it. So these are the catches for those. At the bottom here on the fridge, if you're not going to use the fridge or the freezer for any length of time, there's a little tag there that will stop the door from closing fully, because it seals magnetically around, and you can get stagnant air building up in there, which it'll make the fridge smell. So you need to aerate the fridge, and that is that hooks onto a little tab on the bottom, and that leaves the fridge slightly ajar. So your hob, 3-burner hob. You need an igniter for these. It doesn't have a electronic igniter. It's got the thermocouple, so it'll switch it off if it's not ignited, it's not sensing the heat. Sink we covered. You need to drain out the air of the system by pushing it out with the water, so that's called purging the system. So the toilet, the flush is just there, so you press that button, it'll operate the flush. That there is to tell you that the cassette is full, so there's a warning on there to tell you that that's full. I know you've had a caravan before, but I'll just show you. So to open up the blade on the toilet, so you're pushing it that way, and that'll open up the toilet. So push it that way, open it up, use the toilet, press the flush button, and then close this back up, particularly when you're travelling, because you don't want the liquid from the bottom there slushing around in the bowl. Behind the mirror is access to the garage, where the cushion is stored that we talked about for the bed arrangement. The ladder for the top bunk is in there as well. Shower area should be straightforward enough. It's just a single lever tap, mixer tap, and the doors are secured by these straps here. Obviously, before setting off, make sure that they're in position and secured. If these doors move, you know, as you're cornering, it can damage the doors. So the bed is lowered via the control panel to the right. We're just waiting for that control panel to be fitted. Obviously, I'll show you that on the day that you collect the vehicle. So that concludes the instructional video. I hope that's helpful. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to just gather them together, you can ask me before the day of collection or on the day of collection. I'll be happy to answer those for you then, and I look forward to seeing you when you collect the vehicle.